I want to thank you all for listening and welcome you to the funkiest podcast known to man. And we're turning up the heat, so turn your stereo loud and take a seat, because I got a couple people that I'd like for you to meet. We got W. Luke Pierce, a man with proper style, always rocking fresh shoes made of crocodile. When he hops on the mic, he's guaranteed to make you smile, but he don't got the yarmulke cause he's a Gentile. Unlike our next host, he's the man with the most, always asking the tough questions, not afraid to roast. So catch him on the Twitter, man, he's at the Jew. Everybody calls him Steiny Man, but you already knew, right? Promoter. We got interviews. Promoter. We got tweets of the week. Promoter. We got cutting edge news.
Hey, it's David Marcus from Ticketmaster. Get your tickets to hear me on Promoter 101.
Absolutely loving the new theme song that we're rocking for the second week in a row here. This is Luke Pierce, and this is episode 91 of the Promoter 101 podcast on the Promoter 101 podcast network. This week, we've got some amazing interviews. We've got a client of mine, Home Free, talking about how they interact with the rest of our team, their production team, some of Dan's team, who's out on the road with him all the time. Plus, we've got Copenhagen's Beatbox Entertainment's Mad Sørensen giving us an inside look at his booming festival business among the Nordic countries, and a war story from AEG Live's Bobby Reynolds.
And we'll break down the news of the week.
Hey, it's Mark David,
Steve Strange,
Toby Leighton-Pope,
Stuart Galbraith,
Simeon Galperin,
I'm Ralph James,
Ted Cohen,
Julia Frank,
Jeff Goodman,
Jamie Adler, and Frank Wing,
Doug Edley,
David Klein,
Stephen Riff,
Tom Chauncey,
and we're on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Do you want us to visit you? Yeah, okay. Let us know. We'll do that.
We absolutely will. Planes, trains, automobiles. Dan, I think you're taking a few of them next week, right?
The 24th, I'll be in the lovely Canada at IAVM Venues Connect, and there'll be some really, really cool people there. Really looking forward to being in Canada. And if you're in the room, come introduce yourself in the bar and let us know that you listen.
You're going to be joined by CA's Brian Hill, APA's Ralph James, Frank Productions' Charlie Goldstone, Live Nation Canada's Riley O'Connor. The Rock's going to be in the house. Plus, you got your partner, Jason Zink. So what could go wrong at the bar after a panel?
I imagine there will be some brothy beer going down in the land up north. It should be a good time. I'm really looking forward to being with my venue friends. They are a great hang. We got a couple of surprises set up while we're up there, so I'm looking forward to coming back with some fresh interviews and some feedback from our venue friends, because we haven't had many of them on the podcast yet, and we're going to change that.
Bunch of fun stuff happening up at IAVM and Venue Connect next week in Toronto. Check it out at iavm.org. And if you want to tell us something, just hit us with an email. You can hit Dan and I both. It's steiny@promoter101.net.
You can also follow us on Twitter. That's W Luke Pierce for the Luke one. I'm at The Jew. The show is Promoter 101 and also Promoters 101 with the S, plural. Everyone drinks.
We got them all. Today we are thrilled to announce the winner of the Steiny for a Day contest goes out to Live Nation New York's Jason Miller. He's going to be joining as a upcoming guest host on this podcast, and we want to thank everybody that reached out and submitted their proposals to join us on this podcast. Looking forward to this one.
Miller's got his hands on a couple of icons for this podcast that he's going to interview, and really looking forward to some of the names he's throwing around, but I think he's locked in on what he's got, and we'll have that coming to you in just a couple of weeks, I believe. By the way, my daughter Reese has spent the last couple of weeks at summer camp in Colorado, and this has allowed me and my wife Elodie to actually spend a little bit of time going to concerts, which is something, you don't get to do very often as parents. So I've seen the Avett Brothers at Red Rocks, Matt Franco at Lynx in Vegas, Gwen Stefani at Planet Hollywood for a residency, the Dead and Company at Dodger Stadium this past weekend. I want to give a shout out, by the way, to Bernie Cahill and Liz Norris at Activist for hosting me at the Dead. Bernie told me that he listens to our podcast and he requires his entire team to listen to it as required listening. Pretty high praise indeed. Also mentioned that the theme song tends to get stuck in his head, and I would think that that's a good thing, right? I mean, I'm not 100% sure that he was looking at it that way, but anyway, I had a blast going to shows past couple of weeks. Great artist, and had a great time walking through the front door, paying for a beer, remembering what the fans go through. However, I will admit, I popped backstage once or twice to say hi to some friends, so I know it isn't exactly the normal fan experience, but still, I think it's important that we go back to shows as fans and have that experience so we remember what the fans bands are going through, because it makes it real. It makes it when you're putting shows together and you're budgeting for things and you remember why we have extra security or we put on the extra ushers or why we leave a little extra time at the beginning or end of shows. I think it's important. What do you think, Luke?
Absolutely, Dan. It's easy to be in the music business and be jaded about having to go to shows or cover shows on a night basis. But when it's acts you genuinely want to see and you're out in the crowd, being a part of something that every person out there has the ability to participate in, buying a ticket and going to see a show, it gives you helpful reminders of the fan experience that hopefully you can apply in your business every day as a music industry executive. It gives you a chance to really understand pleasures and pains of going to a concert, and it's a great reminder for that. Just the act of buying a ticket and hopping online and being there at 10 a.m. on Friday is something that every music business person should have to go through from time to time, just as a simple reminder of, hey, this is what everybody else has to do. You hit the road with some amazing shows and it's amazing music and sounds like amazing experiences there too. It seems like a refreshing moment for you, Dan, to kind of remind you why you're doing this.
Yeah, it was a nice kickback. And speaking of that, I have a little rant.
Oh, yeah?
If you will indulge me.
Okay.
I've recently been reminded of the idea of why you and I both started this podcast some 21 months ago. And that was paying it forward, as we've received such amazing gifts from our industry peers and mentors to allow us to work and build our careers in this space, the space that we both love so much. The industry has been my passion since I was a small boy and has given to me with both hands. And I wanted to pay that back, the generosity that had been shown to me by my mentors. And the best way to do that has always been to pay it forward and teach and share the lessons I've gathered over the past 3 decades. I hope that it educates and entertains. I know our humor is not for everyone, and I'm not trying to be everything to everyone. Just a couple of guys trying to say thank you to the industry that has been so very good to us. With that in mind, if we've done that for you in any way at all, please pay it forward to the kids coming up behind us. Try not to be a dick. I know it can be hard some days. It gets frustrating. The agents, the promoters, the managers, the venues, everybody's always grinding each other. We all want a little bit more. Everybody's taking it, making a tighter and tighter deal, and we're all trying to provide for our families. But if you can take a little extra moment for the younger kids coming up behind us and pay it forward to them, show the kindness that has been provided to us that we have these careers, and maybe pay it forward. And that would be the best way that you could pay me and look back for what we've done. We don't allow advertising on the podcast. We don't charge for this. This is all out of our pocket, our time, our effort, our funds, and it's all us paying it forward. And if you could continue to do that, that would be just the greatest thing we could ever hope for.
Well said, Dan. That's not so much of a rant. That's well said.
Hey, it's Elliot Lefko, promoter from Golden Voice in Los Angeles on Promoter 101.
If you've missed any of our past podcasts, well, hey, guess what? We still have them online for you to check out. Episode 49.
Episode 49. That was a great one, Dan. It was recorded live from Western Arts Alliance. That's WA. It was last year in Seattle. We had an industry panel with a bunch of very talented people and great friends, including ICM partners Andrea Johnson. We had the Triple Doors Scott Giampino. Then ABI/NS2's Brian Penix. Now he's with Vector, but a great panel breaking down with a lot of amazing discussions. You should check it out.
And don't forget, you can drop us a review, subscribe to the Promoter 101 podcast. It's free. We badly need your approval. Sign up wherever you podcast.
We need you to like us so much. It's so important to us.
Hold on a sec. Fax line.
Fax line?
That's hilarious. We're getting a fax at the Emporium offices in Washington. That's so awesome. What year is it? Holy shit.
Can you tell all the listeners who that fax is from right now so we can collectively just talk about this for a second?
We'll come back to it in a minute when, it all spits out.
Stay tuned to Promoter 101 for fax updates from Seattle, Washington right now.
I wasn't even aware we still had a fax line. 1983 called.
I really want to know who is faxing right now. I would love to know this.
Okay, well, I'll page you with that information later.
Perfect, please.
And then, you can call me back and when you get that on your beeper.
Yeah, I'll go to the nearest payphone and call you back when you beep me.
Then you can telex me back and then I'll get the mojo out and then we'll hit that back and we can listen to some 8 tracks.
Absolutely.
Because technology is cyclical, Luke.
That's how it happens. It goes ups and downs, and sometimes it goes back in time 30 years.
Yeah, only if you're into vinyl. But otherwise, I don't think technology has ever really worked that way. What were those machines that you used to have? That you used to have the film? You go to the library?
Microfiche?
Microfiche, yeah. You have to get your microfiche machines out. Hundreds and hundreds of those from elementary schools around the world, just like gathering dust somewhere, I assume.
That and floppy disks.
Oh, and VCRs.
How did we get on a technology rant in the middle of this podcast?
Somebody faxed me.
Somebody faxed you. Fuck.
It was a talent agency that's sending out their roster.
Oh, wow.
Oh, God. And, some of the acts on here literally play bar mitzvahs around the Midwest.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to make fun of the agent in particular, but he's not at one of the major six, I assure you.
Yeah. That's a new marketing tactic for the three-letter agencies, going back to a direct-to-sales channel called the Fax Machine. That's amazing.
Hi, this is Rick Farrell, Ricky for Real from ICM Partners, sending you my love from Promoter 101.
News of the week.
Spanning around the globe, Promoter 101 brings you the finest in news. This is News of the Week with Luke Pierce.
Dan, somebody just faxed me in the car about some crazy news happening in Antioch, California here. The EXO Festival, something we've talked about on past podcasts, officially canceled.
Dave Brooks is ahead of the beat on this one. You got to give it up to him for this. He just saw this shit coming a mile away.
He did a good job of warning everybody about this and uncovered and looked past the bullshit of their really glossy promo videos and everything that was out there. He uncovered some information about some real estate fraud transactions that the organizers had been wrapped up in prior to throwing this thing together. So I felt on this podcast like we were holding our breath for another Billy McFarland party down in the Bahamas, but alas, it sounds like these people, weren't making the beat. Whether they just ran out of money or had the intention of running off with the money. Sounds like everybody got protected in this case. Grotix, which was the ticketing company for this festival in Antioch, that was supposed to be happening in the Contra Costa Event Park. That's a California state fairground, July 12th to 15th. That's this weekend. They issued a statement saying that they're canceled. Everybody's going to be refunded. And Dave went one last step to close his story out and say that Grotix refunded ticket buyers. And Dave himself, actually, it's an interesting part of his article. He actually bought 2 tickets to this festival. I assume he was ready to write those down based on his theory of never getting them back. But apparently the Grotix money is already back in Amplify's account. So things just seem to be in order there. Might have been a shot at a fly-by-night. Who knows? But kind of par for the course in the themes of some of these really fly-by-night festivals that are popping up around the country and around the world at this point, Dan.
All right. Well, I want to compliment Grotix. I've never fucking heard of them, first of all. But you got to assume they're in the northern part of California and it's weed money backing them. You would have assumed just based on their fucking... I have no idea, but...
Grotix, it sounds like it.
Grotix, yeah. It's just like, get your green and your ticks all at one place. Grotix. Medical and recreational tickets available. But good for them. This is what ticket companies should be doing. And Ticketfly stepped up last year and took care of the people from Canada that this happened to as well on the hookah fiasco. So ticket companies acting responsibly is really, really helping the business out in a major way. Now, I don't know if you saw the promo that Dave posted for this a couple days ago, but it was the worst fucking piece of schlock ever. The guy's like, we got 3 stages, and they had the field was dead grass, and it was just a couple of random people standing behind him, and it was, we're going to have water and fire, and it's just like, your selling point is you've got water? Holy shit, we're starting the bar fucking low. Oh, yeah, you got to see this thing. Fucking Dave posted it. We've got water. It's going to be amazing. Oh, and in the VIP, you have to pay a little more to hang out with me in the VIP, but we have a VIP. It's just like, what the fuck is this shit?
When water is on the 5th billing, you know that you're in trouble,
It's like it's a foam party, but no, we've got water.
We've got water.
We're bringing in the water.
Has restrooms, has porta potties. That's amazing.
I don't want to raise the bar too much, but we will have H2O on site. Actually flowing water. On premise. This is the festival of tomorrow. Watch out, Coachella.
Get pumped. Water.
I mean, I know we all start somewhere, but maybe we can just figure that air and water will be provided at any festival site as a get-go.
That's fair.
But anyway, I digress.
We are full of tangents today. We'll reel it in here from some serious news. There's something going on the road, Dan, right? What do we got?
21 Pilots are back, man. The Grammy Award-winning duo are hitting the road this year. They're going to be playing North America, Europe, the UK, and they'll be hitting Australia down in the land down under. 2018-19, that tour will roll through, and, you expect that to be just as massive as it was last time around.
I mean, for a second there, arguably biggest band on the planet. I don't know. I mean, 2015, around the Grammy win there, 2016, they were having such an incredible moment live business through the roof. And this is a much anticipated fall release. They dropped a couple new music videos and are slated to start this October playing arenas again. So back out on the road with a really, really great show and some really great music. So something to stay tuned for.
All right. Well, they're a big band, but you can't argue that they were the biggest band on the planet. There's no win there.
You're gonna no. You don't want to go here and talk about this. I think for a moment,
I'm happy to have this fight with you. The Rolling Stones, you too.
At a moment,
we'll have this fight all day long. No,
I'm talking about in terms of the biggest buzz in celebrity for a moment, and I would love to hear from some people who could tweet us during this podcast what you thought about when 21 Pilots were out there just absolutely crushing every award show, every arena for like 3 months about 2 years ago. They fucking were killing it, Dan, for sure. And they were literally everywhere from a media perspective. I'm not talking like grosses, absolute numbers. I'm just talking about celebrity, which is like hard to measure and definitely could be subjective here. So I'm curious to hear what you think.
I mean, I'm not knocking them. They're certainly a big fucking band, but the biggest in the world. I beg to wait for Dave Matthews or Pearl Jam to step in here because no.
Okay. Well, we'll agree to disagree on this one, Dan.
I imagine we could pull the Polestar top tour from 2 years ago and see what
I said it wasn't just about tour grossing. I said it was like for a moment. I'm saying that band was absolutely gigantic. They were on like 2 different formats on the radio. They were on every award show. They were on every red carpet. They slam dunk arenas everywhere on multis and a lot of these things.
I'll give you all of that. That's all correct.
Yeah.
If gross doesn't matter and ticket sales don't matter and anything else that you count doesn't matter.
They sold a lot of tickets, and so their grosses weren't as high as some of the things you're throwing out right now. But I would say that the exposure they were getting, the syncs they were getting, I mean, just let's talk about mix of consumption live, the business as a whole there. I just think their celebrity was gigantic. And I fully expect, again, we'll be talking about this as another huge moment for this band come award season again this year.
Okay, I'll grant the premise completely. With that in mind, who is the biggest band on the planet, in your opinion, at this moment?
That's a tough one right now. I don't feel about any particular band about the amount of space covered in time as I can remember these guys being for a second. Biggest band on the planet right now? I don't know. Drake, maybe. He hasn't dropped tour dates yet, but the streaming numbers were billion stream record breaking stuff, and that shit was everywhere for about 2 weeks in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, 7 out of 10 slots on Billboard. Jesus Christ. I've never seen that before. The guy's competing with himself on such a high level. It's fucking ridiculous.
You know, Forbes wrote either yesterday or Monday, he might have a release ready already for another record coming. So, I mean, largest opening week, crazy second week in a row. Drake's season, as the kids are saying, season, whatever, SZN, is definitely not over yet, seems like.
Canadian Jews taking over hip-hop.
Did I see you using some sort of SZN abbreviation on socials earlier this week, Dan? Or were you just saying Fleek a lot? I saw you saying Fleek.
I had responded to Saggy Isha from Straight No Chaser that it was going to be Fleek. And the word is dead when I'm using it. There you go. Hey, let's move on. Although I think using that metrics, Chance the Rapper would have been the biggest star of this past year.
Yeah, this past year, yes. I would say by consumption, just general feel of celebrity, yeah, that's an argument.
I think we have the tone of this now. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And that wave of vibe and social media TMZ love, certainly credibility
coming
for that.
Out of Grammys, coming out of award seasons, coming out of all the top of the year TV stuff that you get that really does matter to help your stuff. Yeah, he was everywhere.
And 21 Pilots were like rolling multiple arenas in places where you can't sell out arenas for most acts. So yeah, I mean, they're absolutely crushing it. And I imagine we're going to see more of that on this run.
Ted Heinig, we got some updates from Vegas, Dan?
Yeah, so I talked to Ted this week. He wound up getting knocked out at like 30 minutes before the end of day 2. Obviously, we talked about that he started with $50K in chips and rolled it up to $113K. More importantly, he had to win his way in because you have to buy a $10,000 buy-in. And he won a local chair, so they put up the money for him to go. So he didn't actually sponsor his trip there or the buy-in. He had to pay $500 to buy into the local contest, which he then won, and they gave him the $10,000 buy-in plus another $2,500 per diem to cover his room and food and travel and what have you. So he wound up starting with $500, rolling that up to $113,000, continued to do well. 30 minutes before day 2 ended, he got knocked out, but did amazingly well. He's done this. I believe this is his 4th time in. He's taken a couple of years off, but really came back strong this year. But the industry was certainly behind Team Ted. This is so cool.
It was really cool to see everybody make the comments there. And obviously, I didn't know that Ted was a World Series of Poker regular, but he's been playing in events throughout the country, including some stuff nearby his hometown in Knoxville, where he bops over to the Harris properties that host satellite World Series of Poker events in North Carolina, and he's cashed more than a few times there. So really cool to see somebody represent the industry out there, and he went on a great run there, and unfortunately got knocked out before the money, but very impressed by where he's at. I'm sure he's going to be back in future years.
The guy that did knock him out is currently sitting top 10 on the final because it's still going on. It sounds like he's rooting for that guy, but Ted will be on the podcast in a couple weeks, and he's going to walk us through the whole thing from his point of view. And I'm kind of more excited about the poker stuff than like the industry stuff right now. So I can't wait to hear what that's all about from like a rounders nerd kind of way.
For certain, some stories from the felt there too. They've got their final table set playing for $8.8 million for first. Everybody, the final table guaranteed at least $1 million, but we won't know the results of that for some time, as I believe they tape this and then play it live a few months from now. So we'll have to see how it goes.
Stories from the felt. Actually, they've been airing a lot of it live on ESPN like that night. So the bigger tables keep going on. So I think we will see this really close to in real time, if not live on ESPN. I believe that's how that works. There's so many tables on the other days that they piece it together, but I think the end, it's just world news. So we were there. It was live on TV. So some of the stuff that we could walk around and see, you could actually be picked up on camera in real time. So I think that's how, I'm not 100% sure, but it has to be really close to real time.
I haven't watched it in a few years. It used to be where they did this kind of gimmick where they had to tape and edit all the camera stuff together, and then they waited until November when they kind of aired all the series together and then did a live final table thing. Maybe they've gone away from that, but yeah, it's certainly 8.5 or 8.8 million to first is nothing to sneeze at, Dan.
Let's talk about Live Nation stock price, Luke. It continues to go up, right?
It does indeed. Soaring over 50 for the first time, I believe. This is something that everybody was kind of speculating about this week as the stock approached its previous highs in the mid-40s, now breaking $50, almost up to 51. This is an all-time record high for this stock. So a lot of kudos and success going out to leadership under Michael Rapino, whose flywheel strategy, growing revenue, continued acquisitions, and growing revenue has really impressed Wall Street, which continues to drive the stock higher.
Also seeing the Hollywood Reporter and Billboard CEO, John Amato, has resigned. It seems like there's a lot more coming in on that, on what's going on there, but it seems like there's a story there, too, that's developing.
New York Times, Variety, Deadline all had pieces on this yesterday. So this is boiling down to an investigation about examining some of their coverage of the harassment allegations inside the music industry. And so I'm sure this rabbit hole is going to go pretty deep. John Amato declining to comment on any of this stuff through his lawyer, Joel Katz, but his title encompassed Billboard and Hollywood Reporter, but he was mostly the Billboard guy and driving force behind a lot of changes at that organization. So this is something that I don't think we're done talking about, Dan. I'm certainly going to hear more about this. This seems to have like the long lead kind of storyline for it, and I'm sure we'll have some updates in the coming weeks.
I wonder if that means that Dave Brooks is now in charge.
Does he automatically get bumped up? Is that how it works?
I mean, I assume like if you shoot the president, the vice president becomes the president.
Vice president, Speaker of the House, Dave Brooks?
He's definitely the walk-in of our world.
Yeah, so that would make him Speaker of the House, right?
He's certainly the speaker to our hearts.
There you go.
We've got some tragic news. Sunday Daily Unsigns, Rob Vigarelli had passed of a heart attack. Later on in the episode, we'll have a remembrance for Rob by his dear friend Ali Shaw.
This is John Giddings, and I'm on Promoter 101.
It's everybody's favorite time, the announcement, Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
We are excited to announce the Badass of the Week comes from the land of Canada. It's Live Nation's own Harvey Cohen. He is so well loved across both borders, U.S. and Canada, making him this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
Congrats, Harvey, a.k.a. Jumungus. That's his actual Twitter handle. You should check him out.
Check him out.
This is Julia Frank from Wizard Promotions in Germany, and we're on Promoter 101.
For our featured interview this week, we're joined by Copenhagen's Beatbox Entertainment's Mads Sørensen. He's given us a breakdown and an inside look at his booming festivals business in Denmark.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, sir.
You guys own your space. When it comes to your market, you guys are it.
Yeah, definitely on the outdoor scene, at least, because at the moment we're up to 5 festivals, and then we play, I would say, like probably a medium-sized role in the headline shows.
In the last 35 years or so, the market for festivals has exploded, and there was a time where it wasn't a great financial space to be in. Not a lot of people were going. People didn't get it. They were the extreme music heads. And somewhere, probably in the last 20 years, there's been a massive, massive change in the power of the festivals and fans going, and it's an everyman thing now. How has that changed your model?
Well, I think when you're a promoter in a small country, you have to adapt to people's consumer patterns, and the consumer patterns changed a lot just over the last 5 years. People want more value for their money. It's not necessarily that they want the bigger acts, but they want more value for their money wherever they're going, if they're going to a festival or a show. And they tend to go to lesser shows, so they want to group it. They want to go to nice festivals. The history of the festival on the green field, the camping area filled with mud, shit, etc. is totally over. People want to be able to go home at night, take a shower. They want to stay in a hotel. They want to stay in a campsite that is nice and clean. So it's all about adapting to people's needs and consumer patterns, really. And also the festivals plays, of course, a larger role in the artist income. Everyone knows, it's these days the artist makes some money on touring, on merchandising, and in copyrights. There is no such thing as royalties for records and hardly any for streams and downloads. So, of course, the artist is depending on the festivals as well. So you will see a bigger chunk of artists doing the festivals than in, say, like just the last 10 years.
Now, because your festivals are importing most of the talent from around the world, and you're on a certain day, are you having to pay top dollar to get those names to come to you when you want them?
It's always a question about what is around, more than what do you want to pay, because you figure out what is around and then you figure out what to pay. But obviously, there are certain headliners that you want to get. Like you said, the festival circuit has changed massively. There is an enormously amount of festivals these days. So I'm not only in competition with Danish festivals, I'm also in competition with other European festivals, because flights are really, really cheap within Europe, and you have a new invention called Airbnb, which makes it really cheap for people to go. And people has been saving money for the last 5 years, so they got money to spend. So it's about getting the artist that is right for your festival, regardless whether it's a headliner or a smaller act. But definitely the headliners, of course, you pay more money. That's for sure, and the headliners you want, you have to pay top dollars, because they can only do a limited amount of festival shows over a summer. So definitely.
But the travel has to be a huge thing too. It's like a lot of these acts are coming from the US and London. There's definitely some travel back and forth, so that kills days for them.
Oh yeah, but the good thing about Denmark is the way Denmark is situated in Europe, it's fairly easy to pop up from Germany. You have to go through Denmark if you want to go to the rest of Scandinavia. So if you do a show in Hamburg, it's very easy to go up to Copenhagen and play a show. You don't necessarily have to go to the rest of Scandinavia, but you can. But if you want to go to Stockholm, you have to go through Copenhagen.
So for routed dates, it makes a lot of sense. But when you're going after a certain headliner in particular, and it has to be on that date, and you're bringing them in, particularly as the anchor, it seems like that becomes a matter of finance.
It is a matter of finance, and it's a matter of the agent getting the puzzle together. Because a lot of artists can't do shows back to back, There's a lot of things you need to take into perspective. One is the production of the artist. There's a lot of artists still travels with a lot of production, even though they're doing festivals. But it's also the matter of the certain artists. I mean, I work with one of our headliners artists at this year's festival, Northside, who can only do a show every fourth day because of the voice of the certain artist. So there's a lot of things you need to take into perspective, rather than who pays the most amount of money. Obviously that makes a difference, but by the end of the day, it's probably not the one that takes a decision in 100% of the cases. Maybe in, 90% of the cases, but still there is 10% left. So
it's all about the experience when it comes to festivals. Creating the right space, finding the right site, creating an atmosphere that people want to come back to and that people are going to talk about. How much time do you spend on that opposed to just worrying about the lineup, is cultivating an atmosphere?
Wow, that's really hard to put a percentage on it. Well, all the festivals we do is defined not by a musical genre, because you cannot really do that today, and especially not in a small country. It's more about, like you say, it's more about the vibe you want to create, So it's hard to put a percentage down, Should I say one? Probably about 70% of the vibe, 30% of the lineup.
You start with the vibe and then you put the talent on top.
You figure out what kind of festival you want to do, yeah. And then you go around and you think about, what about that artist or that artist? Will that fall into the festival's vibe? And of course, like a lot of artists falls into different vibes. Thank God for that. So you cannot 100% separate the 5 festivals we're doing from each other, but it's more about finding the artist that fits that vibe and that festival. That makes it even more complicated.
So it is a massive puzzle.
It's a great puzzle.
All right, so let's talk about how you got in the business, because you don't just get to do festivals of that size without building some experience.
Well, I started actually in 1984. I met a friend by that time who sadly passed away this autumn, and we were just like a bunch of punk rockers, and we had no fucking money whatsoever. We just wanted to have a huge record collection, and how do you do that? You start a record store. So we started a record store for we borrowed some money from his parents, $5,000 or something like that. After a couple of years, we did another record store, and then I became acquainted with a girl that I knew from the past, and she had this friend who was playing in a band, and she was like, you got to go see them. So I went and saw them a couple of times, and I thought they were fucking great. They sounded somewhere in between Suicidal Tendencies, Black Flag, and Mudhoney. And I became good friends with the singer, and he came to the store one day, and he said, listen, we just recorded this demo. So he gave me a 5-track demo and said, listen to it. So I listened to it over a few days. I said to him, this is fucking great. Why don't we make some copies, just like 20 copies, and sell them in the store for 25 Danish kroner, which is about $4. And we'll give people the money back if they don't like it, So we sold the tapes, and no one came back. So we did another 25 and then another 100. So at a certain point, we sold more than 500 tapes, and none of them came back. So I said, wow, we got to do a record, None of us had any idea. They had no one to book their shows. They had no manager, no nothing. So we made the record in 72 hours, put it out in conjunction with another record store. And they were like, we have no shows. And I'm like, okay, I'll book some shows for you.
So you're just an entrepreneur. You started doing shows because you had to move the album that you made.
Exactly. So I had another friend who was running a small booking agency. So I said to him, listen, I will take a desk and a telephone, and I'll sit in the corner, I'll book some shows for this band, and I'll book some other shows on the side if you tell me how to do it. And by that time, there was a Dutch company called Paperclip, which is still around, but they were quite important in the whole underground scene in Europe by that time, because not many of the English agents wanted to touch all the Seattle bands, for instance. And they all came out of that agency in Holland. So I became really good friends with all the people working there and started doing all of their bands in Scandinavia. Then it kind of snowballed from there.
It was good timing.
Yeah, it was really good timing. And the first really big show I did was in 93 or 94, I think, was the Beastie Boys.
Oh, wow. 93, 94. Is that Sabotage?
Yeah, it was.
So it's huge.
They were great. It's one amazing band, I think luckily enough, Mike D is coming out this summer to play one of our festivals.
A DJ set?
Yes. And in 2000, I sold my shares to what by that time was SFX, I believe, or whatever it was called by that time, and stayed there for 3 years at what later became Live Nation Denmark. Then I left 03, 04, had a competitive close in 4, and then I started up in 2005. Then I became good friends with a guy in Aarhus who had this idea that he wanted to start a festival in Aarhus. And I said to him, listen, a lot of people had tried that. You're fucking stupid, So he started the festival with Just Domestic Talent in 2011. The year after, he phoned me up and he said, do you want to do the talent booking for the festival, or do you want to become a partner? And I said, you're still stupid. I just had twins by that time. So I said to him, listen, I don't have the time to be a partner. I don't want the stress to be a partner, but I'll book the festival for you and I'll take a percentage of the profit. You don't have to pay me any commission for any band. I'll just take a commission of the profit. If you make money, I make money. And then in 2015, I became a real partner in the whole thing. And we started another 3 festivals after that. It's just launched a new one yesterday, actually, that we're doing together with Vice magazine. It's an indoor festival in November called Noisy, like the Vice TV channel.
Indoors?
Yeah.
Are there many different spaces in the setup that you're doing?
There will be 2 stages, and there will be a lot of things going on with record sales, etc., record exchange in the foyer and happenings, etc. So it'll be good, It's not that big. It's only like 4,000 or 5,000 cab. So it's in the same weekend as Pitchfork Paris, so it makes good sense.
Okay, so it routes.
Yeah, it routes. It's going to be a cool festival.
They don't all have to be 185,000 people.
Yeah, no, and those days are over with the big festivals. You got the Roskilde, you got the Coachella, you got the Reading, you got the Vector, but they're far in between them, It's not the way that people want to go to festivals anymore. They want to be treated nicely. They want to have opportunities when they go on site. They want to see great bands. They want to hang out with their friends.
Can you launch a festival in this day and age without expecting to lose and invest the first couple of years?
No, you need to have at least 5 years timeline.
5 years. So you have to have the capital to produce 5 shows and the money to lose over 5 shows and invest into that until you turn it around and start making money.
Yeah.
It's not really losing, it's investing. You have to hold the course.
Yeah.
Year 3 and 4, you've got to get mentally a little harder.
Oh, we were lucky last year when we launched a festival last year called Haven, which is an interesting festival because we do that together with 5 other partners. And one of the partners in the festival is actually The National, the band. And that did almost 20,000 people the first year, and we made money on that festival.
But you planned on not, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you always do that because, especially when you're doing festivals in Denmark, because the weather is so unpredictable. It's not like you're doing a Coachella where you have no rain whatsoever. whatsoever, you know.
If there was one absolute killer headliner you could book, who would be the ultimate?
That's a really, really tough question, because last year we actually had two of the headliners that we've been looking out for a long time, which was Radiohead and Frank Ocean.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool, especially because Frank Ocean only did 2 shows, and one of them was at our festival. So what I really wanted to have on our festival, I really want to have that 4-hour-long The Cure show.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That'll be awesome. I also really want to see Nick Cave return. He did our festival in 2013, and I've seen the guy probably 35 times or something, and this was probably the best show I've ever seen him done. It was mesmerizing. It was magical. So yeah, those two would be great. There will be a lot of stuff from the urban scene, and there would also be some classic artists, of course, not classical music, but classic artists. I would love to see Alice in Chains on one of our festivals, which is a great classic artist. There will be lots, there will be lots. Mark Almond is another one I would love to see on our festivals, But besides that, no, we had a lot of them already, And since we are not 50, 60, 70, 80,000 cap festivals, we cannot afford bands like Metallica and stuff like that. We got Depeche Mode on our festival this summer, but that's probably the most that we can afford. We don't have massive budgets,
Radiohead and Depeche Mode are real budgets. Those are some paydays.
Yeah, those are paydays, but it's not like if you're going to the league of Eminem and Metallica and stuff. I mean, we cannot afford that.
If somebody was trying to get into the festival space and they were just starting out, what advice would you give them?
Bring a lot of money. It's very tough, It's like the live music business changed a lot. You cannot just come from the street and walk in and being a promoter. You could do that maybe 25 years ago, or maybe even 10, 15 years ago, but not today, It's impossible, The business has become so tough, and all the deals are so tight. You got to have a rich uncle to come in,
You got to have a rich uncle. I heard Rapino drop that quote during the Polestar interview. You need some land and a rich uncle, right?
Yeah, true.
Seems like the red tape of dealing with the municipalities as far as traffic flow and making sure the city is ready for their town to be attacked by all of these music fans coming in would take quite a bit of planning and understanding on how to work through that system of municipality.
Yeah, I mean, luckily enough, we have a good reputation with all the local councils. Copenhagen is really difficult. For some fucking reason, Copenhagen wants to be the hippest city in Europe. And it is. It's a great city and it's a hip city. But dealing with the local council and authorities is just a nightmare when you're going to put out outdoor things, If you go to other cities, they will open the doors. They welcome you.
Because you guys are bringing a lot of money into the community, right?
Yeah, of course,
Tourists and hotels and food. And...
Yeah. We got a lot of criticism for our Tinderbox Festival, which is in Odense, which is the third biggest city, because we got quite a few pennies from the local council. But they just pulled out the calculator and they said, we'll give you this money because we know we'll make 4, 5, 6 times back.
So they're like a sponsor?
No, they're not like a sponsor, we work with them, They even went as far as they were doing a lot of preparation for the field as a part of the deal, and they've been great. It's so different than working in Copenhagen, And the same thing in Aarhus. It's fantastic. Aarhus is doing a new site which opened in 2021, where we'll move our Northside Festival to. It's going to be a great site because the local council invest money in it. They know that they're getting the money back. And also, like I said earlier on, traveling is so cheap, Airbnb, so you'll have people coming in from all of Europe. I mean, the Haven Festival we did last year, the one where National is part of, we had 22% coming from abroad, and that is huge. That is a lot of people coming from abroad. It's maybe not a lot in numbers. It only accounts for about 4,000 people, but still, 22% is a lot.
4,000 people, that's 2,500 hotel rooms. A lot of people eating meals in the town, a lot of people buying gas. Doesn't hurt the economy at all.
Exactly.
What's the future of the festivals? Is there anything that you see changing that is going to change the experience for the fans?
Nothing that's going to change the experience for the fans. I think the only thing that really worries me is, of course, the artist fees. I guess you're hearing that from any promoter, but it's to a point where it gets critical, to a point where there will be artists which you cannot book because they're simply too expensive, even for the big festivals.
Is that greed or is that supply and demand? A little bit of both.
A little bit of both, I believe, But of course, hey, you got to make money, but so do we. So it's if you can't agree on the fee, there's nothing to do about it, an artist is worth that amount of money for that particular festival. It might be different on another festival. It might be 10 times worse for another festival, but yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time and talking to me.
Thank you, Dan.
Matt is just a key player in the international festival space. Excited that he was able to join us.
Hi, it's John Meglin from Concerts West, and you're on Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
Just can't be avoided. It's the title of this podcast. It's time for those Promoter 101 tweets of the week. We got to start here, Dad. Failing to respond to an email is just bad business.
If someone takes the time to hit you, you should respond. It costs you nothing. Nothing.
when you call an office and ask to leave a message and the receptionist asks you to email because it'd be way easier.
Laziness is just not good business. Make it as easy as possible for people to do business with you. Otherwise, they'll do it with someone else.
When someone's website is so hard to use, you just give up.
You got to design your website so your parents can use them. It's got to be that easy for people to buy tickets. The harder you make it, the more people you'll lose in the process. Think about what could your parents do and could they do this? There's a major ticket company out there whose website is so hard to use. I don't know how anybody gets through it. I think about these things. It drives me nuts.
That'll do it for some Promoter 101 tweets of the week. Make sure you keep up with Dan on Twitter. He's @TheJew.
That's not plural. It's just the Jew.
Hey, this is Kevin French, and I'm on Promoter 101.
We're joined next for a war story from Las Vegas, AEG Live's Bobby Reynolds.
Bobby, give it up.
We had several runs of residency business with Guns N' Roses over at the Hard Rock. Some weekend nights, if we could put a comedian on before Guns N' Roses, we would do that. We had seats on the floor for most of the floor for Guns N' Roses. For the comedian, we seated everyone. And we would do a 7:30 door, 8:30 show with the comic if we could do it. And one time we had Jim Jeffries playing the joint. Great comedian, funny as hell, and a really cool dude. So he's playing for us, and we say, okay, you have to be off at a certain time because there's a band playing after you, happens to be Guns N' Roses. He happens to be a huge Guns N' Roses fan. Super excited about it, does his set, gets off, reconfigure the room, and start loading in the Guns N' Roses crowd.
This is 2 separate shows that night, essentially.
2 separate shows. Flipped the house and brought GNR in. So I'm back in Jim Jeffries' dressing room, and he goes into his bag, his briefcase, and pulls out a big bag of mushrooms. And he was like, do you want some mushrooms? Oh, man. I was like, I can't. Any other circumstance, I'd love to hang with you, but I have a Guns N' Roses show tonight. I can't be tripping on mushrooms. My bosses don't ask that much of me, but that's one of the things. I've
got to know mushrooms will
yeah, one of those, it's my deal. No psychedelic on the clock. So we hang for a while, and he does his thing, and give him a bro hug, and say, please come back anytime you want. I said, by the way, Jim, we're going to be hanging in Suite 4. If you want to come in, here's how to get there, and I'll buy you a drink. He comes into the suite, pretty much under control, and then you just kind of see the mushrooms kick in. And he starts getting into the music a bit more. He's sweating, and he's telling me how much he fucking loves this band and how much he loves this band and how cool this is, that he played the same venue as Guns N' Roses and blah, 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 blah. And he turns around and gives me the biggest kiss right on my lips, right in front of my then girlfriend, now wife, and then looks at me, and I think the mushrooms really kicked in, and then goes downstairs for the rest of the show. And I was like, what the fuck just happened, And then he's on Jimmy Fallon about 6 months later telling this story. The only difference was he didn't mention the giving me a kiss part, but I have witnesses, so I'm sticking to my story.
He did mention the shrooms part.
He mentioned the mushrooms and mentioned everything I mentioned. And then Axl would have a party in his suite after every show. That would go into the wee hours of the morning. Out of 30 parties, I probably went to 3 of them, 4 of them. Of course, with my new girlfriend at the time, we're going to go to Axl's party. And we went up there and hung out. And there was Jim Jeffries just staring out the window. not a bother in the world. Just standing out. I don't know what he was thinking, what he was doing. And I definitely didn't want to bother by asking him. But whatever he was looking at, a window, was seemingly very interesting to him. So,
all right. So in this war story, we have Jim Jeffries, Guns N' Roses, tripping on mushrooms and making out with dudes.
Well, I would say making out. I would call myself, an innocent bystander. That got a big kiss from Jim Jeffries.
Well, that is going the extra mile to keep the artists happy.
Customer service.
Awesome. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Bobby is overseeing one of the most intensive service markets in the world, Las Vegas. I can only imagine the other stories he's not able to share with us. The full interview with him is coming up in just a couple of weeks, and it's unreal. It's one of the most educational pieces I've ever been a part of. I can't wait to hear it.
Hi, this is Zed McBull,
Melvin Ben,
Peter Ricken,
Alex Peeliot,
Venus Ayoko,
Ben Chalice, Carl Leighton Pope,
Herman Sherman,
Charles Attell,
Lucy Dickens,
Josh Javor,
Matt Sørensen,
and I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
In our second feature interview this week, we've got Home Free, talking about how they interact with their manager, Mr. Luke Pierce, our own, and production team, Abe Nielsen, about being on the road with the guys and how they all interact. It's going to be a fun piece. How you guys doing?
Hey, we're awesome, I guess. It's exciting, right? The Oak Ridge Boys.
Exciting. Yeah, we've been waiting for this for a long time. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
The first ever show with the Oaks now, right, guys?
We performed with them once at the Opry.
But you did a video with him, too, and it's done really well. in the Pinnacle Bank Arena tonight because we got almost nearly rained out at the Pinewood Bowl Amphitheater. Beautiful outdoor amphitheater outside in Lincoln, Nebraska, but excited to be in front of a great crowd tonight. We're here also with Abe Nielsen from Emporium Presents, Home Tree's promoter rep now.
Hello.
Abe is the man.
So this is all kinds of incestual, right? Yeah. Obviously on the podcast, we talk a lot about you guys as kind of the example of everything since it's a day-to-day thing for me and Luke. But to actually have you guys in and talk about your interaction with management and promoter and crew and how that all comes together from conceptual to actually getting on the stage and doing the show. And then all along that line, when somebody fucks up, who fucked up?
Well, oh my God, we can say the fuck word. That's awesome, first off.
I'm really curious about how the first time you guys met Abe, because it was kind of one of these things where I feel like Abe just kind of showed up, right?
Magically appeared from the heavens. That's the
clouds parted.
Yeah, exactly.
Where was it when you were at our first show?
Our very first show together was at the Aladdin Theater in Portland. But that was a fly-in, but we didn't really interact much because you guys just showed up in a minivan, knocked the show out, gone. I did force a round of fireball shots on you, courtesy of Mr. Steinberg.
Next door. Yeah, I remember that.
And then we caught up later on the road. I think our first show was actually in Oregon, too. Our first touring show was at the Elsinore Theater in Salem.
Okay.
And I jumped on the bus with you there, and the rest is history.
I remember you just being backstage, and I was like, I have no idea who this guy is. I don't know what he's doing here at all. I'm not going to talk to him.
He's going to look, should we trust this guy? He looks burly, like he could fuck some shit up. I can't say that out loud.
In all fairness, the fireball came from a night at a WA conference in Seattle where Tim wanted to see if we could get Dave Britz, who is also involved with the management team, to do shots with you guys. And he ordered Fireball. And I thought that was your guys' thing, the shittiest alcohol in the world, Fireball. So I've been forcing that upon you guys for 3 or 4 tours, including parody merch.
I'm so glad we can finally clear the air on this.
Yeah.
If I never did another shot of Fireball, I'll be fine.
Well, that was our merchandise guy, Nate. Like, that's his shot. And so he was always out ordering shots. So we just ended up having Fireball way too many times.
If we're going to shoot something, can't we shoot something that everybody would actually enjoy?
Yes, and I'm glad as Chance said, thank you for clearing the air, and now we're all on the same page. We drink nice alcohol.
We should be totally worth it.
So we should be drinking.
So now we'll all be drinking Boone's Farm. Yeah, we're moving up the level.
That's another headache in a bottle.
You guys are playing an arena tonight, and you guys have moved up through the steps of clubs, through theaters, and now playing a good number of arenas. So you guys have a production that scales to many different sizes, and you do a lot of festivals and fairs. You guys can pretty much make any stage work for you. But you really have developed the show from 500 seaters into 7, 8, 10,000 people in the right scenarios. So everything has to be kind of clicking on a team that's working. Let's take through the steps of when you guys were on the TV show, and obviously the sing-off was a huge thing for you guys. But how did we get here, and how did management help augment those steps?
Yeah, I mean, we always say that one episode of that show put us in front of more people than the band had ever performed in front of for, 12, 13, 14 years of its existence before the show. TV does it, especially if they like you.
But you guys have done a tremendous amount of work, not just in touring, videos between that TV show that ended 2013. I mean, we're middle of 2018 right now, 5 years later, where you guys were at that point. I mean, it's been a lot of work for you guys. You put in the time, you put in the effort. I mean,
absolutely, but we have awesome management. We've got an awesome team telling us the best advice. We just take it most of the time. We trust the people that we work with, and I think that that's also a big part of this is trust. I trust you guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you guys are killing it.
We just followed the plan that was put in place by Luke and David and Works Entertainment, to be honest with you. Coming out of the TV show, we had a big platform, but we knew that the attention span of the general public is ever shrinking, and the spotlight of national television fades real quickly. So we knew we had to do something to keep people's attention, so we turned to YouTube.
And you guys have really made YouTube work for you. Like, there's 1 million people on YouTube with millions of followers, but they can't sell a theater to save their lives because they have this 5-second clip that goes viral, but they don't have a rest of the show. You guys have a full show, and you guys are constantly putting out new, fresh content on YouTube.
And we had the show before YouTube. The show was sort of like, that's what the band did.
Your live concert show.
Right, the live concert show before YouTube started happening. and before the sing-off is what made me want to be in the band. I saw the show. I saw the guys. They were funny. It was good music. It was a cappella. I'm an a cappella dork. I was like, these guys have got it going on, you know? And the YouTube part of it has allowed us to take that business working, you know, with Luke and folks like yourself and really turn it into something amazing. And it's also interesting, I think, we were courted by, let's say, like 5 or 6 different managers and management groups when we won the show. People that the show put us in touch with, people that some other people put us in touch with. And, you know, we'd have a call with them or whatever, and they'd all say the same thing. They'd all be like, oh, guys, congratulations on winning the show. So what do you think about adding instruments? It's like, really? Right now? We won an a cappella show yesterday, and that's all you have to say? No one really had any kind of a plan or an idea of what to do or what. They were just like, we like you guys. Well, sign with us.
Hey, we like you. You should do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Instead of capitalizing on the momentum that we had with a cappella music.
Yeah. And then David Britz and them came to us and said, hey, we can build a touring business for you guys. And you guys want to do YouTube videos too? And we were like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that.
And I think apart from having the right people around you on your team, it takes time. Like, it's about time spent on the road, like going out to all these markets, not just once, but like going back to that market again and like building. So you have the team around you and then you just put in the time. Because when we're not on the road too, we're still putting out content. We're in the studio. We're making music videos. So.
Yeah, the building of the markets was the toughest part because, you know, sometimes you're going in front of like a 1,200 seat theater and there's 300 people there. And that was happening early, right after the show.
Right.
I mean, that like never happens anymore. So things are really
we're all thankful for that, by the way.
Yes, we are.
And on top of that, I think it's also just about keeping going. People are always like, what's the secret to your success? Really, more than anything, that we haven't stopped. We never stopped. We never slowed down. We just kept moving forward step by step. Just keep going, you know. It took the guys before I was in the band. I think the band was around for like 7 or 8 years before they were ever making money. They were doing it because they loved it, and they just kept going. And eventually, that was able to turn into something. And I think it's still kind of the same motto now. We're just, you know, every year's been a little bit better than the last. So we're just going to keep going.
Well, let's talk about that. The day in and day out of being on the road is kind of humdrum. I mean, backstage seems very, very exciting when you're in the audience. But actually back here, I mean, essentially you're in a big ballroom at a hotel backstage. Yeah. There's really nothing all that exciting. It's not very glamorous. It's
always white walls, you know.
Cement
like
and very light carpeting.
Right. I always feel like sort of guilty when we do some sort of promotion where we offer like backstage passes to someone because it's such a letdown once they actually get back here and they see
we're so boring.
These
we're reading
fake
books and stuff.
and all the exposed brick and asbestos. Yeah.
Welcome to our pipe and drape lobby.
Yeah.
Okay, so the humdrum of that can wear on you. So the day in and day out on the road is really, really hard. You got to like really learn how to handle that time away from your family. I mean, you guys have got families and young children at home. Congratulations, Rob. And the idea of being away from that and being on the road in the middle of nowhere, it's got to take a little bit of training and patience and build up on your nerves a little bit.
Sure. Well, like Chance always says, he's always like, oh, you know, we're built for this. We all have been doing this for so long at this point. You know, I grew up in a family. My dad was like a Southern gospel singer. He was always on the road. And when I was a kid, I'd go on the road with him as well, you know, for a while. Like, I just love the road.
Yeah, we did this. All of us did this to varying degrees before we got to this level too. So we were all kind of prepared. I mean, if I were just thrown into this right away, even though I always wanted to do it, I don't know if I would have been able to do it.
You have to really want it.
You have to want it.
Maybe why some artists crash and burn. You see these people that really skyrocket to the top and then they crash just as fast. And I think it's because this isn't for everybody. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think this is their dream. And then you get out on the road and you realize like it's hard. It's not easy. You're away from your family and friends and it is Groundhog Day. And if you can't find the joy in that, it ain't for you.
All right, let's do some guerrilla math, Luke. We're playing an arena tonight. The show grossed, what, $150,000 to $200,000, somewhere in the ballpark?
But 150.
Okay, right, something like that. You would think automatically, if you're a fan, you guys and the Oak Ridge Boys split $150,000 to $200,000 tonight,
Wouldn't
right?
that be nice?
Yeah, man, God. Can you get us gigs like that?
I think it doesn't happen because of rotten promoters. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, that's the dirty side of the business.
You're talking to my audience here. They actually would honor me for that.
At what point do we start promoting ourselves?
Ooh.
Oh, I just
speak a little louder next time.
If you could see Dan Steinberg's face right now.
Good business is good business, obviously. I'm just saying that's the question.
Fireball it is.
Damn it.
All right, so let's go back to some guerrilla math, Luke. So say we're splitting that in half. Let's say it's a $200,000 gross, $100,000 per camp. The promoter gets their take out of that if the show is profitable. Let's assume that we made a little money tonight.
Let's assume that, first of all, at $150,000, we're talking 8-9% in taxes. Venue rent, you've got marketing that went into this, you've got ticket facility fees that went into this, you've got production expenses if you're bringing in sound. The bands aren't taking home, as we all know.
We're supposed to be on another stage tonight anyway, so I'm assuming that that's costing something. Too.
It's not. It's not
Okay,
actually.
cool.
Same deal tonight. They'd even switching over. If it
we were lucky enough that it's the same management company that had both facilities.
If it were not, they were able to cap expenses here tonight and keep it down to the same deal. Otherwise, we would have been in a shitty situation.
Otherwise, we'd be outside and it's been raining. But so let's assume, for the sake of quick guerrilla math, gross 200, split it in half, production and whatever else locally, venue, taxes, ticketing, promoter, 100,000 between the two acts, talent wise.
Sure.
Okay, so now 50 per act. Let's just spread it down the middle. Let's say there's $50,000 that's going with you. So you're already 25% of the gross, and now you've got to pay the management, the agency, the bus.
Well, yeah. What are you guys touring? You've got tour manager. You've got a front of house guy.
It's typically a 6 or 7 person crew. So like you said, tour manager, front of house, lighting director, merchandising manager. We're traveling full time with a videographer these days, oftentimes a stylist, and then we sort of have an auxiliary guy who helps.
I love that you have a stylist, Tim.
I know.
And then we got business managers as well.
Yeah,
they take their cut.
Yeah,
that sounds to me like on a $50,000 day, you guys owe $20,000.
Feels that way.
It definitely, especially for a long time. We just got out of our deal, so.
There was a majority of that money used to go to the label. We're doing a little bit better now than we were, say,
Brand new
3
day.
months ago. But even still, that pie.
But the audience would think that you guys would be walking with essentially all of it. But when it's said and done, and actually after everybody that has their hand in your pocket, then you guys finally get down to your net, and then you're splitting it 5 ways, right?
Splitting it, more like 6 ways, because we put a little bit of everything aside to cover unforeseen expenses as well.
Because putting on a tour is expensive. You got to have some money in the bank if you want to go on the road.
Right. You got to reserve to start the tour just in the first place. It's not like an easy thing there. I'm looking at the Oak Ridge boys tonight, who's coming here in 2 tour buses, larger crew, and a truck tonight too.
Man, today Dwayne was just talking to us on stage. He was like, "Yeah, we have to do 150 shows a year to be able to pay everybody on the team." And he was like, "And we're at 149 right now. We got to book one more." Not that they've done 149 so far, but in the year they've booked 149. And she's like, "I've got to get one more, and we'll be
funny.
we'll be
explains why William Morris has been on the phone with me. Terre Haute's coming in, I swear.
Well, and that's interesting, too, because it's something we always talk about, and it's something we focus on. Family and time away from the road, and working less and making more is always an objective. You guys want to spend time and do other things in your lives, too. So a lot of your decisions in business are starting to, weigh those options of what's most important for you guys. You're getting to that point where we can make those decisions, which is a great place to be in. But not every artist is, afforded the ability to do so, to work less and make more. Hopefully that's the MO for you guys in the future,
Preach.
Yeah, that's the
Preach
dream.
on.
That's the dream.
All right, so let's talk about it from a musician standpoint. You guys start a new cycle, the album, you're figuring out what songs you want to take, how you're going to have it composed, because being a cappella, figuring out those pieces is not just getting in a room and just figuring it out. That's a lot of arranging in advance before you even start poking around with it, since you guys have got 5-piece harmonies on everything. That's a lot of work. So just figuring out the song list of what you're going to attempt on the next tour, it's got to be a massive back and forth in discussions before you ever get in a room, right?
You would think so, but most of the time it just makes sense. We don't really argue too much about what the songs are going to be, the ones we add. And we also, one of the things I love most about our whole tour life is that we've got our show as it is right now, right? But over the next, from now till we get to our Christmas show, we'll probably change out 2 or 3 songs maybe. We've just filmed 6 videos last week for YouTube, and we liked several of them. We were like, let's put 2 or 3 in there. But we never add more to the show at once than, say, 2 or 3 songs.
When will there be a Hanukkah show?
Woo! I don't know. Tim pissed them off one time, so.
All right, we have Steiny's blessing.
I was just going to say, it's not as easy as a band. You get a band into a room and they can just throw their part in and they're ready to go. But that's one of the reasons that we like. We've got our set and we just replace every cycle. We'll add in some new material, but
we're doing more and more originals. But there's always going to be a handful of covers, on our records. At least for the next couple of records, it might be split down the middle this time around. But it's not like we're just writing a project start to finish either, and we can come up with a theme and stick to that. So we've got to figure out how to be cohesive between our originals and the covers that we choose to do as well. So, much to Luke's dismay, I'm sure, like he wants a theme going in. Okay, what's the theme of this next record? And we're like,
making money.
You give us 3 months, give us some money, and let us go park our ass in the Caribbean, and we'll write you an album with a theme, okay? But our business model just doesn't work that way. And in a lot of ways, we're really paving our own way. Like, there's no blueprint for what we're doing. No one else has done it like this. There's a lot of people. A guy told me at an acapella convention I did recently that he's teaching a class based almost entirely off of our model of success, like what we have done and how we have gotten to where we are, which I think is pretty freaking neat.
It's cool. It comes with a lot of pros and a lot of cons.
Absolutely.
But it's awesome.
All you need is NBC to produce another season of the Sing-Off for that to be a model you can even work.
I guess so.
Or some other network.
Right.
I mean, but you say that, but like, let's look at our Facebook numbers. When we finished the show, we had just over 100,000 likes. So everything from that point on really came about from when we started releasing more and more and more and more content. The content is really, the TV show gave us this awesome bouncing springboard to like jump off and discover who we were going to be. But the work we put into YouTube and into touring nationally consistently has really been what has funneled us to where we are now.
Talk about international for a second too, because you guys just put up European tour. It's your third time in the UK, second time in Europe now. First couple times, we talk about putting in work. We're not easy.
Is this like the first time we might make money, right?
Yeah, that goes back to what I was saying earlier about putting in the time. Like, we've gone over there how many times now? 2 times.
Yeah.
Never sing in other languages?
3 times,
or is it when you guys go over?
Oh, God, no.
Twang don't count, right?
Redneck in many languages, right?
And that also ties into what we said earlier about putting aside a portion of any profits we make, because the first few times we went overseas, we lost money to be there.
So you're investing in yourselves.
Yeah.
But now it's starting to pay off. We're going back again, and we're starting to see that stuff increase, and it's making sense.
So there's something you guys do in particular that a lot of groups don't do, and I find it fascinating. You go out after every show and you meet the fans in the lobby. It's something that Jeff Foxworthy and David Copperfield used to do in the day, and you've seen like guys like Cable Guy pick that up, and Straight No Chaser does it too, but this thing where you actually take the time, instead of selling the VIPs where you have to spend $1,000 to meet us and it's the only way you can meet us.
Sure.
You guys will be in the lobby for anyone that wants to wait in the line, and they don't have to buy anything. They can meet you if they wait in line. That's such a giving thing to do every night after you guys have been in the venue and done your show and should be truthfully exhausted.
I mean, well, we are, but we have a really great process for how that experience goes, first off. And secondly, there is something intangible about making direct eye contact with someone as they come through and we're signing a CD for them or just shaking their hand or whatever that is. There's something about that moment that when we first started doing this, I know we were all kind of aggravated by it. Like the sing-off.
Yeah, slowed us down and getting to the bar. I really hated that
that's
shit.
Right. But the sing-off tour was, they had us do that after NBC and Live Nation, whoever put on the tour. They were like, you're going to go out and sign afterwards every time. We were like, okay, whatever. But now it's gotten to this place where our fans are really awesome. They're all really respectful for the most part of the moment. We don't, knock on wood, we don't have a bunch of drunkards coming through the line, with no concept of time or space.
Just Steiny.
But there's something about that moment that I know myself personally, I've really grown to enjoy. Because it's also something that never takes too long. It's not like we stand there and have a full conversation.
It's like 45 minutes, give or take, depending on the size of the crowd?
Let's say a half hour. Yeah, let's say a half hour, give or take, sometimes less, sometimes more. But for the most part, it's kind of crazy. Every venue we go in, people are like, they see the line and they're like, oh my God, we're never going to get out of here. This is going to take forever. And then, Jenica, tour manager's just like, just wait. And then 20 minutes later, they're through and everybody's like, how did you guys do it? So-and-so was in here last night and they had 1/3 the amount of people and it took 3 times as long. And I don't know what to tell you. It's just one of those things that it kind of happened naturally. We didn't make a plan for how it was going to go, but it's a smooth process. And I kind of like it. It's just making that eye contact with everybody and seeing the joy in their faces, or seeing 13-year-old girl coming through who can't talk because she's shaking and crying. It's like, we're not that cool, honey. I'm sorry, but
it all comes back down to us having a completely different business model than everybody else. That are a lot of people in the industry, and the fact that we are just a bunch of down-to-earth guys that came from these small town backgrounds or country backgrounds, and we just want to be in touch with the fans. That's kind of our thing, just to be in touch with the fans.
Yeah, and maybe it's because we're the sober ones in the line, I guess, because a lot of artists go out, and they've been drinking the whole show or whatever, So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the difference. We wait to have our drinks till after the signing line, but I don't know.
Okay, so you guys have this experience where you're on the road, you've built your show in the bigger theater. When you're building the production of your show, and it is a high energy, big production show, you're not 5 guys on stage with stools and microphones. There's lots of lights, there's lots of pieces. shows. It's a really fun, high energy show. So when you're developing that, how involved does Abe and Jenica and Luke and your sound guys all become in the development of that process once you guys pick your songs? And how much is that in my head? I see a disco ball popping up at this moment.
I mean, it's certainly a collaborative effort across the board. We let everyone weigh in along the way, even just from song selection.
Because budget's a thing too, right? Because that all has to be spec'd.
Absolutely. And then we bring in production folks and have them weigh in on what they think it should look like. And then we figure out how to pull that off. And then we bring our choreographer in and have her make us look like we know what we're doing up there.
We should just call her our stager as choreographer. I'm using air quotes. You can't tell.
She's the most patient. She's the most patient lady on the planet. But, and even once we kind of get things running, we still bring people in and continue to woodshed it. I mean, it's like, come watch this thing, tell us what you think we can do better. And a lot of times it's on the fly. Try this,
Now, how much of it's like a comedian where the big comics go and test the material in the clubs before they take it to the big theaters or they do their special? How much before you guys tour is that trying some of these things out to see crowd reaction going, oh, we thought this would have been a great song that people would have loved. It's coming out immediately.
Every show is a test. Tim's really great at just ad-libbing, you know what I mean? And we all kind of like lean into that sometimes because every night there's somebody in the audience yelling something because they want to be a part of the show. We don't have a lot of concepts beforehand, really.
But when you first start a tour, like the first couple shows, you're still kind of feeling out what the show is going to be. So there'll probably be 2 or 3 songs where you just don't know if it fits in that spot right. So a lot of times we'll have to switch out the order of the show just so it'll blend a little better. And you can't really figure that out until you go out on the road and get the reaction from the fans.
So is it a better show to see the first night of the tour when you guys are still figuring it out, where it's a fast show, or is it better to see the last week of the tour when you guys are nailed?
See.
Yeah.
If you want to see us thinking hard, then go to the first show of the tour.
And it seems like our most diehard fans really want to see that one. They love seeing us up there going, I don't know where I'm supposed to be next. And then they Rob.
So it's like a live blooper reel, essentially.
Exactly. They love seeing us not knowing what's going on.
Like was mentioned earlier, these days we're not just overhauling the show as much as it's always evolving. So each time we go out, 3 to 5 tunes will be different. So if you see us this year and then you don't come back and see us again until next year, most of the show is going to be different by the next time you see it. Maybe that's why we have so many repeat customers, and also because there's not a script and we just run our mouths and run with audience interactions and stuff like that. So no 2 shows are alike anyway.
When you guys are working on the routing, how much is Luke has our free dates? He knows when we don't have to be at home. We just wait for him to send us the schedule versus, man, we really want to go to Hawaii, man, make that happen.
Pretty much column A, just pretty much. Yep. Pretty much Luke's like, okay, guys, here's your routing. And we're like, well, looks good to me.
And I appreciate the trust in that. I mean, we've kind of all sat down collectively and said, we want to be playing X number of shows. We want to be going back to markets a year, 18 months. At first it was like, we got to find enough dates in the calendar to fill up an entire year. And, there was only so many strong markets we could come back to make money work. And now it's like, we're able to stretch that out and let the world miss you, which I think has really probably helped your product in the long run, because you're not bringing back a show every 12 months. The show that you're bringing back 2 years from now is vastly different than the one you brought a year ago. And I think that's what is exciting to fans, is that you're not selling the same product. They're going to come and see almost a completely new show at that point.
And we're in that odd but enviable position where we've got these songs now that are considered home-free songs, even some of the covers, that people want to hear. We're at that point where when we're building a new show, some of them you just have to keep. And if you lose one of those songs, it's a terrifying thing.
I can't imagine the day will come for years where we don't do Elvira or Ring of Fire, like at least one of them. I could see one of them maybe not being done or in some capacity, right? But like both of them, like we could never not do one of those, at least not for the next 2 or 3 years at least. I don't want to either, because the audience.
There was a little while where we did Ring of Fire as an encore. So we'd leave the stage and you'd come back on and you'd see some kids crying because they thought the show was over and we hadn't done Ring of Fire. And then you do it and then they're okay again. But it's like, that's so much responsibility.
It's real.
I think what you guys are able to do now, and especially moving forward, being able to kind of return to places every 18 months, 2 years, I think you're delivering to fans just a better product on the whole, and being able to spread out these appearances in between markets is going to help you move up in room sizes, and, letting the world miss you is an important thing. You see some of these club acts, and in order to make the money work on a yearly basis, they got to go back to a market 2-3 times in a year. You're not bringing the same show back. You're not bringing a different show back every time. You're bringing the same shit back every time, which eventually that just tires out the world, I've seen that already. I don't want to go back and see that again. You guys don't have that problem.
For you, is it the same process with all your artists where they completely just say, here's our time frame, go book wherever you want to book us? You know the parameters?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So that's a normal thing.
That's a pretty normal thing. It's kind of on us to kind of keep the calendar in the book and like know that we played this market 2 years ago. I mean, we keep pretty extensive like records of data of like what we sold, when we played it, when it's right to go back. So for us, it's, it's pretty much just tossing up a market every 18 months, kind of flipping between Christmas and non-Christmas shows for these guys. But for most artists, it's say, all right, I want to book this period of time. I want to be on this bus with this production. Go make the money work,
So things like playing Minneapolis home market, seems like those shows in particular have got to be the stress of not screwing that up, being the pressure of getting the home market right, not only for the fans who are way more invested there than probably anywhere else, but to make sure that they leave stage happy every time. That seems like that's what you got to put the most effort and thought out of any play,
I think every show is certainly important, but the hometown shows, certainly, yes, you feel that added pressure. You feel friends, you feel family, you feel, for your artists, you want that to be the best thing, because I know in Minneapolis, we're going to have Rob's family and his in-laws in there, and Austin's family in Tifton this year, and we played Nederland. I mean, we've played a bunch of places in Alabama. We got to play Mobile for the first time for Chance's family. And those kind of days, you want the show to sell well. You want to be in the right venue. You want to be the right night of the week. And all those things kind of add up just to like making sure it's a great experience. Because on a tour of 40 shows, the one you're going to remember the most is, oh my God, my hometown show was amazing. Or my hometown show was less than amazing. And those things stick with you more so than the random Tuesday in Lincoln, Nebraska,
Shit, I've been phoning those in. Were we supposed to try harder on those days?
Wait, do our fans listen to this? Shit.
I didn't know Nederland and Tifton existed, that there were venues in these places. I want to thank you both for that.
The venue in Tifton is relatively new. It was built like 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, and it was amazing. Like, I went on the website. It's like, oh, Travis Tritt, there's a real venue. Okay, like we can pull that a show.
I don't think that happens in Nederland.
There's a seating map. No, we had to fly people in to do the box office in Nederland. Yeah, that was like extra people on that one. It's like, yeah, they don't know how a seating map works. Okay, we'll figure this out. We like the challenges. Appreciate that. Abe, in your world of dealing with these guys, working with the same act, being literally on the bus with them, in a role where you are part of the crew, essentially, you're out with them and dates that, regardless of what's going on, what's there, you have responsibilities. You're living on their bus. You're interacting with them more than you are on a regular tour. How is this gig versus working with any other act we do change your gig?
I really like that I can focus on the finer points now with these guys, because I get the big picture and, we've done over 100 shows together. And so now I really have a shorthand with the crew. I know what they like. I know what they need. And I know that there's an in-between there with some of those things. I guess the difference is, like I said, being able to really fine-tune things. And that's why I like where we're at now is, to come in and I've earned their trust.
We're friends. Like we hang out at his place in Oregon when we're not doing anything.
Do you not charge them the Airbnb rate for that place when they come? They're on the arm?
Well, if the whole band comes, we're just going to pay them. But
so we've become friends as well as, coworkers, and so it's a really neat relationship. It's become something more than just people who I won't really remember at the end of the show because I might not ever see them again. They're true friends as well as great people to work with.
The interaction with crew, and you've got 5 guys in the band that you interact with the first thing when you wake up in the morning, opposed to it's like the band pisses you off one day, it's like, fuck it, I won't see them for fucking another 3 months. In this particular case, if you get you have a bad day with an act because the show was weird the night before or something happened, you're gonna see him in the middle of the night when you guys are both trying to go to the can on the bus. It's got to change the vibe, right?
It did, and especially in the early days, it felt like it was really a high wire act because of that added, like you said, if you have a shitty day, what's tomorrow going to be like? And as far as how to deal with it, I think we just kind of have. I found a different connection maybe with each of the guys. I'll play board games with Adam, and I'll talk sports with Rob, and Tim and I will go to breakfast, and Austin and I will have our mandates every once in a while. So just finding that common ground, I think, has really made that work a lot. Is focusing on the similarities and where we get along together, and with the crew as well too. Like, it's been really enjoyable to develop that, and I think that made the other stuff maybe less important isn't the right word, but okay. If things weren't perfect, that wasn't the end of the world.
Now, do you think because you're on the road with them and on the bus and you interact, there are things that you guys deal with internally that normally on another show would have gone back to the agency or management or the promoter that we never hear about?
I think so. Yeah. I don't want to tell you right now.
Well, no. But are there things that might have become a bigger issue that they can just say to you because they know you better? Like, hey, this is bugging me,
right?
And you can squash that quicker.
Yeah.
Or is anything harder because we're friends and you can't be all business with us?
I can't think of something like that necessarily. I mean, there's moments where with the crew, we're all just be like, hey, you got to trust me on this. This is how it is. And because that trust has been earned, that's it. As far as fixing stuff as well, yeah, some of that is just, we just get it done. So it doesn't have to go up the food chain and back because, we've become that sort of autonomous unit in some ways.
You guys are a pretty unique act on the road. I mean, some of the gags that you play on each other, I think most bands do, but I believe there was one venue that called because you basically had a petting zoo backstage.
There were some exotic animals around.
I mean, you're going to have to be more specific. That happens a lot.
I want to say it was Fargo, but yeah.
Well, was it the kangaroo or was it the leopard?
Listen, if you're listening right now and you own some interesting animal that most people don't own, that's an easy way to get backstage passes to a home free show. And some people have figured that out and exploit it, and we'll take them up on it every single time.
I feel like our insurance rates are going up the second that theirs.
I mean, there were little kangaroos. They were babies.
It was a little leopard.
Why don't we just make that part of the VIP experience? Meet home free, pet potentially dangerous creatures.
Or they show up with a weird critter, they get into the VIP.
Ooh. There's that Oregon language coming at you. Critter. Very cool. Well, I want to thank you guys I know you got a show to play and I want to let you guys get to it, but I want to thank you guys so much for taking time and being on the podcast. I think the insight of what it's like to be on the road is something that we don't tend to think about when we're behind our desks and realizing that you actually have to go to these places and be on the road and away from your family.
I'm just so glad you asked us easy questions. I thought that we were going to be here just to illustrate how little artists actually know about their business.
I would have been good at that.
Our last question is in 27 parts. And you can't use your cell phone.
The fact of the matter is we probably don't know as much about our business as we should, but it's because we can trust the people we work with, like you and like Luke and like Abe. We've been very fortunate. You've never let us down up to this point, and we know you never will. So thank you guys so much for what you do for us.
Appreciate that.
Home free on Promoter 101.
Thanks, guys.
This was such a fun case study, and a big thank you to Home Free for making time for us from their busy schedule. This was great to have them on the show.
Hi, I'm Mitch Rose, co-head of the music department at CAA, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Celebrating some birthdays this week, July 13th to 19th, 2018.
Friday the 13th, Mark Engel, Dan Merker, and David Strung.
On Saturday the 14th, we're wishing a happy birthday to Alan McGowan, Ty Sutton, and Ian Cheshire.
And big congrats to Ty on his new job in Dayton, Ohio. Sunday, Abe Nielsen, Jim Cressman, Alan Corbett, Katie Fox, and Thomas Hunt.
On Monday, wishing a happy birthday to Alex Christie, Billy Hardinson, and Tim McGrath.
Tuesday, AEG's Max Adler and Jerry Gerard.
Wednesday, a happy birthday to Bruce Eskowitz, Jerry Teal, and Russell Carter.
Thursday, 7/19, Home Free's Tim Fouts, Matt Runner, Steve Heath, and Jason Ladson-Ness from the Numos in Seattle.
It's a happy birthday to everybody from the gang here at Promoter 101.
Jim Glancy, Barry Presents on Promoter 101.
The industry lost a dear friend this week, and with a remembrance of Rob Figuerella, Allie Shaw.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me. So, we lost Rob a few days ago, sadly enough, to a heart attack. He'd been having some health issues, and I think Rob was way too young to, I like to say, tap out. I met Rob years ago, when I was still managing bands and all the other things. And I'd reached out to him, of course, like everyone else, for Daily Unsigned, which he owns, and put on for Band Discovery, which he's done with so many bands, including Macklemore and Imagine Dragons and The Weeknd, and put these bands on before anybody else. And he was doing A&R for Wind Up and other people, and I reached out to him. And from there, we just kind of became friends. And then we started working together. We started managing bands together. And I have the best memories of him, especially when him and Amber had their place over by the Hollywood Bowl, and all these great barbecues that we used to have over there, and all the music shows we used to go to. His love for music was insane. He would literally listen to a couple hundred bands in a day. He'd say he knew within 3 seconds of listening to a song whether it was a hit or not. He just had an ear for this, and he had signed so many great bands to so many labels over the years. I had gotten so many phone calls and so many text messages and so many emails of support from people talking about their interactions with Rob over the years that it just only solidified what I already knew of him, of how great his heart was, how much advice he'd give, how much he'd help people. His bands that he was working with were reaching out to me. Huge industry people were reaching out saying I loved working with him. And it was just amazing the amount of love and support for Rob because he was just a really decent soul. On the other hand, the biggest goofball. I mean, this guy was cracking jokes all the time. He was always pulling pranks, and he was just a lot of fun to be around. And it's a hard one for me. All I can say is I miss him. I miss him dearly. We didn't have enough time. You think you have all the time in the world. You really can't take life and people for granted. The industry and the world has lost what I like to say a really great soul. And I'm going to remember him for all the goodness and the greatness he was. And that's my story.
Rob Figuerella, gone too soon. Thank you, Allie Shaw.
Thanks, Dan.
This is Charles Attell, C3 Presents, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Thank you for tuning in. This is the end of episode 91 of Promoter 101. We appreciate you tuning in. If you like this podcast, you got some feedback, some questions, some stuff you'd like to hear more about, you can always hit us on email, steiny@promoter101.net.
The quote of the week comes to us from the beautiful and lovely Diana Krall. You want the listeners to use their imaginations and figure it out on their own. Don't give too much away.
We'll be back next week with a brand new episode 92 of Promoter 101. We're going to be joined by AEG's Global Touring's Mark Norman and Tedeschi Trucks Band tour manager Skip Richmond.
For a change of pace, we're wishing you out there 98.3% of your houses sold for the week to come.
Not quite clean. Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm Sarah Beasley from Wolf Trap, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Hey, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all for listening and welcome you to the funkiest podcast known to man. And we're turning up the heat, so turn your stereo loud and take a seat because I got a couple people that I'd like for you to meet. We got W. Luke Pierce, a man with proper style, always rocking fresh shoes made of crocodile. When he hops on the mic, he's guaranteed to make you smile, but he don't got the yarmulke because he's a Gentile. Unlike our next host, he's the man with the most, always asking the tough questions, not afraid to roast. So catch him on the Twitter, man, he's at the Jew. Everybody calls him Steiny Man, but you already knew, right?